The HoverMatt Air Transfer System is a lateral transfer and repositioning device. You can use the HoverMatt to perform the following patient handling tasks: lateral transfers, boosting, repositioning. We will review the features of the HoverMatt and HoverTech air supply that you should be familiar with before operating the transfer system. We will then demonstrate 3 of the 5 patient handling tasks that can be performed with the HoverMatt: lateral patient transfers, boosting the patient in bed, repositioning the patient on an inflated HoverMatt. The HoverMatt Air Transfer System includes the HoverMatt Transfer Mattress and the HoverTech air supply. The storage cart is an optional offering that provides easy portability and storage for the HoverMatt Transfer Mattress and air supply. The air supply inflates the HoverMatt to cushion and cradle the patient. At the same time, air escapes from thousands of holes on the bottom of the HoverMatt to reduce friction and the force needed to move the patient, making patient handling tasks easier. The HoverMatt is radiolucent and artifact-free. The mattress material is latex-free and has antimicrobial and anti-static agents. Both the HoverMatt Transfer Mattress and air supply should be disinfected between patient uses with the same cleaning solutions your facility uses for medical equipment disinfection. The transfer mattress can also be machine laundered. Refer to the HoverMatt User's Manual for detailed instructions before laundering the HoverMatt. HoverTech also offers the single patient use HoverMatt. This patient-dedicated transfer mattress can be used in any department to eliminate infection control concerns and the need for laundering. The HoverMatt has 2 safety straps that buckle over the patient. These are not restraints, but rather provide a sense of security and visual comfort for the patient and caregiver. Always ensure that the safety strap buckles are secured for turning and lateral transfers, and that the straps are not tight against the patient's body, especially after mattress inflation. The perforation holes on the bottom of the mattress allow air to escape, which reduces friction and makes transfers easier. There are 2 hose entries, one on either side of the foot end of the mattress, to make transfers more convenient. The hose is inserted into the opening where a non-magnetic metal snap and Velcro closure ensure the hose will not come out during use. The label on the HoverMatt indicates the foot end and top side of the mattress. The instructions for use, warnings, model number, and serial number are located on this label as well. The HT Air 1200, HoverTech's newest air supply, inflates all HoverMatt and HoverJack models, as well as our inflatable positioning devices. Because airflow can be controlled and adjusted with the HT Air, only one air supply is needed to inflate all of our air-assisted safe patient handling products. The HT Air has an LED control panel. 3 buttons initiate airflow, and a standby button turns off airflow. The standby button is the second button from the left. When the air supply is plugged into an electrical outlet, the standby button power indicator light will be lit. Press the standby button anytime you need to stop airflow. It is important to remember that this is not an off button and that power will still be supplied to the device after you have pressed standby. To the right of the standby button are the airflow options for HoverMatts and HoverJacks. The button labeled 28-inch and 34-inch HoverMatt is used to supply airflow for the HoverMatt transfer mattresses that are 28 or 34 inches wide. The far right button labeled 39-inch and 50-inch HoverMatt and HoverJack is used to supply airflow for the larger 39 and 50-inch mattresses, as well as for inflating both the 32 and 39-inch HoverJack patient. Now we will demonstrate how to laterally transfer a patient using the HoverMatt Air Transfer System. A minimum of 2 caregivers are necessary to use the HoverMatt for lateral transfers. If the patient's weight exceeds 750 pounds, 3 caregivers are necessary. If the HoverMatt is not already on the bed or stretcher, place it underneath your patient by using the log roll technique, making sure that the patient is centered on the HoverMatt and positioned with his or her head 2 inches down from the HoverMatt top edge seam. Both patient safety straps should then be buckled, ensuring the 2 ends click together and will not separate when pulled. The safety straps can be adjusted to maximize patient comfort, but should remain very loose. With the air supply cord plugged into an electrical outlet, insert the hose into one of the 2 entry flaps located at the foot end of the HoverMatt. Open the flap and insert the hose at a slight angle. Snap the hose into place, verifying that it is secure, and close the entry flap around the hose. Make sure that the transfer surfaces are as close together as possible with wheels locked, and that the bed heights allow the best ergonomic working height for the shortest caregiver. It is recommended that transfers be performed from a higher surface to a lower surface whenever possible. The height difference should be 1 to 3 inches. One caregiver should be positioned next to the patient before the air supply is turned on. This caregiver should inform the patient of the task and explain what the patient will hear and feel. One caregiver hand should be placed on the patient's folded arms while the other hand holds the nearest HoverMatt handle. This is called the position of safety. Inform the other caregiver that it is safe to inflate the air supply. Inflate the air supply by pressing the appropriate air speed button for the model of the HoverMatt being used. The caregiver should stay by the air supply until the HoverMatt is fully inflated. The other caregiver maintains the position of safety until the HoverMatt is fully inflated. The label on the back of the HT Air lists which airspeed button is recommended for each model of the HoverMatt lateral transfer system. In this case, the transfer mattress is a 34-inch HoverMatt, so the 28-inch or 34-inch HoverMatt button is selected. If using HoverTech's original air supply models, Air 200G or Air 400G, press the gray button to initiate airflow. Once air begins to flow, the HoverMatt will inflate and begin to cradle the patient. When the HoverMatt has fully inflated, the caregiver on the sending side should begin the transfer by pushing the HoverMatt at an angle towards the receiving caregiver. This reduces unnecessary reaching on the part of the receiving caregiver and ensures that both caregivers maintain ergonomic positioning. Once the patient has been fully transferred to the receiving surface, ensure that the patient is centered on that surface. While the caregiver beside the stretcher remains close to the patient, the other caregiver should ensure that the patient is centered by performing a visual check at the foot end of the stretcher. Move the HoverMatt to center the patient on the receiving surface as needed. Once it is confirmed that the patient is centered, the caregiver at the patient's side will assume the position of safety and ask for the air supply to be turned off. Turn off the airflow of the air supply by pressing the standby button and stay by the air canister until the mattress deflation is complete. Once deflation is complete, raise the side rails and elevate the head end of the stretcher as needed. The patient's safety straps can be disengaged and the air supply hose may be unsnapped and removed from the hose entry flap. If it is not in contact with the patient, you may also choose to leave the hose attached. This section will explain how to use the HoverMatt to boost and reposition a patient in bed. If the patient and HoverMatt slide down in bed, a boosting technique can be used to reposition the patient back towards the head end of the bed. 2 caregivers should be present for this task. With safety straps secured and the air supply hose inserted into the entry flap on the HoverMatt, one caregiver should assume the position of safety while the other caregiver turns on the air supply using the appropriate button for the HoverMatt model in use. After the mattress is fully inflated, the other caregiver will move into position on the opposite side of the patient. Both caregivers will grasp the handles closest to the direction they are repositioning towards, lock their wrists, and slide the patient and HoverMatt to the desired location. This is a horizontal gliding motion requiring no lifting action. Once the patient has been repositioned up in bed, one caregiver will return to the position of safety and ask the other caregiver to press the standby button to stop airflow. You can then disengage the safety straps and raise the bedside rails.